Hello Curious and welcome back. Medical dramas are as popular as ever, and many, such as House, ER and Grey's Anatomy, had captured the attention and at times even the hearts of their viewers. Yes, we are looking at you, McDreamy. And while most dramas to a certain extent take some creative liberties when it comes to hospital work, the medical jargon and all the other goings-on of the hospital, there is one that is based on an actual real-life hospital and a real-life medical director. The show in question is, of course, New Amsterdam, and the doctor, Max Goodwin. But just how accurate is this show when it comes to the history of the hospital? Who was the doctor that the character of Max was based on? Was he involved in the show in any way? And what are his opinions on the production that is based on his career? Stay with us to find out all about how accurate the NBC drama is. But before we continue, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our future videos. To start with, if you are yet to watch New Amsterdam, mainly the first and second seasons, then a little warning as there might be some spoilers for you. The character of Max Goodwin, who is played by Ryan Eggold, sticks out by the frequent question that he asks his staff, "How can I help?" which he says many times during the TV show. On top of this, during his first job as the medical director at the New Amsterdam Hospital, he organizes a meeting with all the staff to introduce himself to them and then proceeds to fire their entire cardiac surgery department. Since then, the show has seen the staff go through many different ups and downs, both with regards to hospital life as well as the private life of the staff. Currently, the show is on its 4th season, which is currently on a break and set to return on January 4th, 2022. And while things have been over-dramatized for the sake of the TV show, the character of Max Goodwin is loosely based on a real-life doctor. The man in question is Dr. Eric Manheimer. He graduated from SUNY Downstate College of Medicine in 1975, and he completed his residency at Kings County Hospital, where he got plenty of first-hand experience, especially during the infamous 1977 blackouts in the city, when he had to treat the injuries that people obtained while looting shops. Overall, including his med school and residency years, he spent a total of 10 years working in Brooklyn. Then, for the next 17 years, he ended up working at Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center in New Hampshire, yet as he would later reveal, it was his time at Kings County that gave him critical experience, which later on allowed him to reconnect with old colleagues and friends from medical school, which ultimately helped him get the job at New Amsterdam. Though in real life, the hospital goes by a different name, and that is Bellevue Hospital, where Dr. Manheimer worked as its chief medical officer from 1997 until 2012. One of the things he did, which later helped him write a book and then helped with the series, was walking around with a notebook and taking notes of everything that he saw. As he said in an interview with MedPage Today, "I still do it to this day. I was very interested in the patients that came here and their stories, why they were in the hospital and what was driving it." But the man also took note of the many political things that were going on outside the hospital doors and if or how they affected his patients. One of the biggest events that touched the hospital in the modern days, especially in a number of patients, was the events of 9/11. In total, from his years at Bellevue, the man ended up with 150 notebooks, and in 2011, that made him decide to sit down and write a book. As for his life after Bellevue, the doctor now works as a clinical professor at New York University School of Medicine, and as per his website, he is married to his wife with whom he has 2 children and 2 grandchildren, both of whom were born at Bellevue. As for his book, he chose the stories of 12 patients and wrote them out in depth, looking at the political situations, their private lives, and anything else that might have effects on their health, because as he said, a very substantial amount of hospitalizations are related to social determinants. And as he set out to do, so he did with his book, which was titled 12 Patients, Life and Death at Bellevue Hospital, which was published in 2012. The book became popular, and soon TV networks were contacting him, asking him to buy the rights to make the book into a TV show. He decided to settle for NBC, and so New Amsterdam was made. When comparing himself to the character of Max Goodwin, that in a way is based on him, the man said that he too was pretty radical when he joined Bellevue, because he knew the system very well, and despite the fact that NYU Bellevue had their own culture, he knew that he could handle it. The storyline of the show, and especially Max's, also touched upon the cancer diagnosis. Unlike Max, who found out the news at the end of the very first episode and his first day at the hospital, Manheimer got his own diagnosis 11 years into his job. The cancer he had, just like Goodwin, was a squamous cell carcinoma, and when he underwent treatment, he turned the duties over to the hospital's associate director. However, unlike the series character, he had the opportunity to take some time out of work for 6 to 8 months, and when he returned, it was only for short periods of time. For the series, Dr. Manheimer also used his experiences with prisoners at Rikers Island, illegal immigrants, and Wall Street tycoons, which he chronicled in his book, and that ultimately helped carve out the fictional Dr. Goodwin's unique nature. And besides his book, when it came to getting ideas for the show, he turned to his 150 notebooks for help. When speaking with the New York Post about all the different cases he experienced, he said, "We had lots of weird TB, all kinds of oddball HIV. We were the disaster capital for other things too, obviously 9/11, but if there were shootings or other things that went off in the city that caused problems, Bellevue was the place." On top of this, while working at Bellevue, Manheimer's team would go to Rikers Island once a month to coordinate care for prisoners he said were the sickest people in NYC, adding that many have a mental illness or that they're addicts or that they're HIV positive. Given that the real-life doctor was made as a producer on the show, the writers would come to him with a situation where they would need a patient in a certain scenario. In his interview with New York Post, he gave an example where he had a patient that was terminally ill with a very severe cancer in his groin who was transferred to Bellevue. Once being told there was nothing they could do and that he wasn't going to make it, they asked him and his wife what they wanted, and their answer was to go back home to see their kids, who they haven't seen in 6 years. The couple was from Mexico, and so Manheimer spoke with the consulate and they arranged for the man to be transported back home, where he passed away in a local hospital a month later. This was one of the countless stories adapted into New Amsterdam. However, in this situation, it was a middle-aged woman who was from a different country. On top of this, he keeps in close contact with Ryan Eggold, who often comes to him for advice on how he would behave or act in a certain situation and what kind of things would be running through his mind. The show is also partially filmed at Bellevue, including the entrance to the hospital, which many fans of the series will surely recognise. On the show, Max wants all the doctors to prioritise care over money, to treat all patients even if they won't be able to afford the payments, which at times get him and his team in trouble, such as one episode where he encourages physicians to defraud the hospital through downcoding, providing expensive and time-consuming care to patients, then lying about it in the medical record. This is something that many in the medical field had criticised the show for. One staff member who works at Bellevue wrote a piece for The Atlantic talking about this, saying that as heartwarming as Goodwin's intentions are, it might make people distrust doctors more than some already do. The staff member, who remained anonymous in the article, claimed that the internet and many unchecked pieces of media and news, especially when it comes to vaccines and medicines, had caused some people to distrust doctors and other medical professionals, and portraying them as people who could actually help patients by doing it at a reduced cost or by breaking rules at work, which very rarely happens in real life, could make those people distrust doctors even more. So there were also those who claimed that by portraying Goodwin and his team as doctors who go against the system, which they reckoned could inspire others to do a similar thing, and that it would lead to a change being made in the American healthcare system. However, when it comes to treating people for cheap or for free, this is kind of what Bellevue has been known for. The hospital was founded in 1736 and is America's oldest public hospital, which had started out as an almshouse for the poor. The hospital soon became a refuge for the city's poorest, and according to an 1879 Harper's New Monthly magazine article, it was described as catering to the dregs of society, the semi-criminal, starving and unwelcome class who suffer and leave this world unrecognized. It was also reported that the place was overrun with abandoned infants, the mentally ill, alcoholics, victims of epidemics, the homeless, and all sorts of different patients. The place was overcrowded with 3 people to a bed, and in 1876 it was reported that 48% of all amputations proved fatal due to the poison in the walls. The hospital also had its own psychiatric hospital, which housed its fair share of famous patients, which included Mark Chapman, who ended the life of John Lennon. If you want to know more about the former member of the Beatles, you can do so by checking out our previous video by clicking on the link above. However, for all the negative things, Bellevue was also a pioneering hospital, which is mentioned in the first episode of New Amsterdam. It had many firsts for the hospital as well as the medical field in the US, such as the city's first morgue, and it was the first hospital in the whole of America to run a maternity ward. A Civil War veteran surgeon who worked there created the first ambulance, and the place was also the first to use hypodermic syringes, have a pediatric ward, and contain a specialized unit for outpatients. In the mid-1980s, it was one of the first to create an AIDS clinic, and in 2014 volunteered to take in a patient who was recovering from Ebola. Today, the place runs a state-of-the-art, first-rate medical institution and has built a reputation as one of America's most progressive and renowned hospitals. And it is a place where diplomats from the nearby United Nations and convicts from Rikers Island prison meet. So curious, did you know the past of the famous hospital? Are you a fan of New Amsterdam? Did you know that it was based on real-life facts and information? And do you agree with the criticism that the show had faced? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.